Welcome once again to St. Louis. I'm your host, George Blaze, and as we're recording the program today, the weather is ramping up. This appears to be one of the warmer weekends of the year so far coming up, and warmer weather is ahead. And as we all know, with warmer weather and the changing of the seasons, things start to heat up out in these streets. Our young people have spent the last year or more locked inside with nothing to do, no services, no programming, no resources to really deflect some of that energy that they need to express as young people in order to be healthy people. We're all, as adults, also having our own challenges and situations here. To talk a little bit about where we're at, where we're going, and how we can avoid perhaps some of the things we've seen in the past year is my good friend, Ajuma Muhammad. He is a psychotherapist, an author, a leader, a speaker, so many things. Ajuma, it's so good. I know you've been traveling all over the world, but it's good to have you here for a moment.
George, thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity to educate and empower. I'm honored to be here. I'm humbled by this opportunity, and I pray that God will bless me in the next few moments, hopefully to say something that will inspire and motivate people to move to an entirely different space and place in their life. Thank you so much.
Well, you're always appreciated and always welcome here. Now, I understand you have been traveling extensively across the world and have a full schedule for this year of travel. As you go from place to place and taking a look at the circumstances for Black people around the planet, are things much different in the Dominican Republic and parts of Africa? What stays the same and what really is different from the last couple of trips you've taken?
That's an interesting question. One of the primary motivations for my travel is to kind of compare and contrast lifestyles, the way people interact with each other, the political climates, the educational institutions, the way people interact with one another. You know, for a long time, there was a notion that poverty breeds crime, and it probably does. No one wants to be impoverished. But I've been blessed to go to almost 60 different countries throughout the world. George, as I previously indicated, just returned back from the Dominican Republic. I guess it's considered a third world country. Africa has its own unique struggles. However, there seems to be a civility amongst the people there that regardless of their economic condition or status, they just have a way of getting along with each other that is very rare, unique from America. You know, in Africa, you know, the notion was floated that Africa is just an impoverished continent, and Africa is a continent, which is 3.5 times the size of the United States. And so, like anywhere you go in the world, you have different classes of people. You have people who are poor, you have people who are middle class, and you have people who are upper class. So it was amazing to go and see the wealth that Africa holds, the many homes and houses that are huge and humongous. And the interesting thing is that, you know, places in Africa are so big, they call them compounds. They don't even call them homes anymore. And you can get those compounds or homes for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost you in the United States. So, for example, in the United States, a home that might run you $1 million or 1.5 million in Africa might run you 250,000, 300,000, and you actually own the home. And the unique thing is, and this really challenged my way of thinking. You know, in America, George, you find a home that you like, your wife like, and you go pick that home out, and you pay for that home over a period of 30 years. And let's just say you buy a home for $150,000, $200,000. At the end of that 30-year term, you've paid almost $2 million for a $150,000 home. And there's a thing called an amortization schedule. And so you paid these banks interest because you didn't have the money up front to pay for this home. And so you end up paying for this home 3 times, 4 times over. In Africa, they do it very differently. For example, it may take you 2 or 3 years to build your home, but at the end of that 2 or 3 year cycle or period, you actually own the home. And that's so much better and is a wonderful concept instead of being in debt for 30 years trying to pay off a home that in some cases can actually be taken away from you through eminent domain or other, you know, methods that the state or the government use if they want your property or they want your land. So something to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting that you should mention that, and perhaps it is I mean something intrinsic in terms of African people across the planet, wherever you find us. A little over a year ago, I was traveling in Jamaica, and a guy took me to what appeared to be a sprawling town on the side of a mountain somewhere between Montego Bay and Negril. And it was explained to me that this is former heavyweight champ Lennox Lewis's house, that's been constantly under construction since he bought it years ago. And you'd think it's a whole town, but this is his property, and he's never stopped building on it. He continues to build and build and build. It's just an amazing thing to see.
Wow, that's interesting. You know, a story that was shared with me maybe a couple years ago when I was in Africa. A brother asked me, he said, "Hey, brother Muhammad," he said, "you know, I've never been to America, but I do watch YouTube videos." He said, "Why is it when two people get into a physical altercation in America, the first thing people do is go and get their phones and cameras and they record it? Ultimately, it gets uploaded to YouTube." He said, "In Africa, if three people get into a physical altercation, over 30 people will run in and separate the people and break it up. And they don't even have to know the two people who got into the physical spat." And I said, wow, that is very, very interesting. The way that we coexist with each other in America in comparison to the rest of the world. So, economically, some of these other countries may be economically third world, but in terms of civility and to me, they're first world, be just the way they interact. You know, I saw people who were draped in poverty, but they had this mutual respect and conciliation for their neighbor or whoever it was, and you just don't find that in America. So I'm really concerned, George. You know, I'm really concerned with some of the things that I see in the media, how they influence our young girls. You have shows like The Housewives of Atlanta and many shows like that that are very entertaining. However, they're psychologically, socially, emotionally seduce. They seduce people. There's a seduction element to it, and those kind of images tend to foster a certain way of thinking in our young people and adults as well, because there are adults who DVR those shows and they live on those shows every week. And I'm just really concerned about that image and imagery that is postulated or put forth for us in America, particularly for people of color. And I don't think those are the most positive images. So I'm very concerned about that. And I think it's going to have a systemic and residual effect on our community in the years to come.
It's awfully troubling to me when I see these. Lately, there's been a spate of videos that have been uploaded and shared in the news media and what have you of young people breaking out in physical altercations at these airports. And it's just like, what is it that serious? What is it that's going on with our young people today, that it seems like your first reaction should be the worst reaction and to push everything to 10 every single time?
hmm Well, you know, the unfortunate reality, whether we accept it or not, is that we live in a very, very violent culture. And there's not a single moment in a day that you can't turn on your TV and see violence being displayed by Hollywood directors who make violence palatable and is socially accepted like baseball and apple pie in America. And so, you know, even with the video games, and George, you and I, we've talked about it. I have a ton of clients. They watch and play and participate in video game violence all day, every day. These same students can't read, can't write in cursive, can't complete a sentence, can't put words in a sentence and communicate. But they're watching these video games, and so they're developing this sense of desensitization and a lack of empathy. And so when they come in contact, I shouldn't say when they run into somebody, but when they come in contact with somebody, you know, they can go from 0 to 100 real quick. You know, something else too, I just want to kind of throw in and something to think about. You know, George, I work with a lot of children who are in the foster care system, and these are children who were abandoned by their parents. And I've said it many times, the two people who brought you in this world, your mama and your daddy, your mother and your father, those are the ones who are supposed to show you unconditional love. And for whatever reason, they're not there. So mom abandoned you, and dad, we're not quite sure who dad is, or dad might be incarcerated or deceased. So a child grows up in these facilities These institutions are in foster homes. Sometimes they're abused within these foster homes. Sometimes they're not. So they grew up with a sense of disconnect or emotional disconnect. So they're walking around full of rage. And so that kind of rage is played out in the school systems and in everyday interactions with others. So it's troubling and it's very concerning.
One of the challenges that we face as we move into the summer of 2021 and try to get to a post-COVID type of reality or normality, or as close as we can get to it, is and something that I've personally noticed just being out and about lately is that people, after having been locked in their houses for a year, I think a lot of people don't know how to act around other people, and there's a lot of awkward moments, and there's a lot of strange social behavior that I didn't recognize before all this happened. Of people now, it's almost like they have sensory overload, and it's making them reactionary in a way that I think is very unhealthy.
I would concur. I would agree. And I think, George, that we were already socially isolated prior to the pandemic. And I think the pandemic made it even more pronounced. One thing about these digital devices, if you go in the airport, if you go almost anywhere, coffee shop, anywhere, people are just glued to these telephones, the social entertainment from TikTok and things that come along with it. And so we don't necessarily have to communicate with the person sitting next to us, or we can walk in a room and we don't even have to say hello. We're just engrossed and glued to these telephones. And so that has put a damper on the social communication, which has resulted in social awkwardness. So people don't necessarily communicate. So I think we were socially isolated before the pandemic, and now it's even intensified and even more pronounced since the pandemic because people couldn't get out. And so they really became engrossed slash addicted to social communication and the internet. So it's concerning. It's very, very concerning. And I tell you another thing too, the residual effect is that our children are not getting out exercising. I read a study that said that the average American gained somewhere between 15 and 25 pounds since the pandemic. And so, that's going to open a door for type 2 diabetes, particularly amongst our young people, because they're not getting the proper exercise. And it's just, not healthy, unhealthy on every level.
It is really challenging, and we really do need to put an effort into putting resources really as we start to open things back up to try to get people healthy again, healthier than they have been during the lockdown situation. When we talk about young people in particular, this is one of those areas that we've had an ongoing issue, particularly here in many of our urban centers in St. Louis, recently in Chicago. I want to highlight this situation that happened in Chicago where, the news story was of a 6-year-old girl killed in a hail of machine gun fire at the McDonald's drive-thru with her father. A tragic story. But then when you peel back the layers of the story, this young man had recently posted on social media a video urinating on another deceased gang member's grave. And that was the reason why he was being followed and had his daughter in the car, and that happened. And it's just like, it seems like we're in this never ending cycle of you get what you ask for. So why are we keep asking for it?
I don't know if we're necessarily asking for it, but it's a reality of where we are here in America. When you were telling that story, I was thinking about you're going to speak to the story of the young sixth grader who, in the state of Idaho, went into a school and shot up the school, shot up, I think, a safety officer and two teachers. I mean, we're talking about a sixth grader, somebody who was in middle school. Um, you know, one reality that has come into my mind of understanding is that America is a business. It's a country, but it's i.e. a business, which means everything is for sale. I'll never forget maybe 26, 28 years ago when they had the mass school shooting in Columbine, the Columbine mass shooting. And these were 26, maybe 28 young white kids who had been slaughtered in a mass shooting, and there was no gun reform. They didn't put a ban on assault weapons, and since that time, it has gotten progressively worse. We America has had 133 mass shootings this year alone, and we were just touching down with June. We're just walking into the month of June, but already think about that. Let that marinate in your head. We've had 133 mass shootings, and we're just halfway through the year. And so when I say America is for sale and it's a business, the city that I'm in, which is St. Louis, Missouri, they have a gun show that's upcoming in about a week. And all throughout America, gun shows are everywhere. So the proliferation of guns that's on the street, the young people now have adopted assault weapons. There's so many young people right now who are walking around with not 9 millimeters or handguns. They're actually walking around with assault weapons. I seen a client maybe about a week ago. I saw a young man who I've been seeing for years. He jumped out of his car and he had a AR-15, which is an assault weapon with a 33 round clip. And I just happened to ask him, I say, hey, man, what's up? Why are you walking around with a AR-15? He said, just for protection. I say, wow. So this has become our new normal. Unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. So, with regards to a decline in shootings and homicides and the example that you just mentioned with regards to McDonald's, I don't see it stopping in the foreseeable future. I just don't.
Also, you talked about role models and leaders, thought leaders. That there are some out here that are doing great work that I admire quite a bit. I'm 50 years old now, so there are some people who I hold in high regard that the general media and press right now see as pariahs, and yet I happen to know, I think about, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who I'm not a Muslim or anything like that, but I can't imagine a world in which he was not there. And every time, they have Founders Day in Chicago, and he speaks, he says, this may be the last time you see me, and after me, there will be no more. And that's a real thing. We were losing a lot of our leaders in the community, and some of our leaders are really have to do with just Black people. It's not for other people to criticize one thing or another that they've said or done. They've called him an anti-Semite, but I've also seen him do a concert of great Jewish composers on the violin, most beautiful music I've ever seen in response to that kind of stuff. So it's like nobody ever talks about that part of it. But my point is that we're losing a lot of our classic leadership in the Black community globally.
Oh, I agree. My hat's off to Minister Louis Farrakhan. I had a conversation with him maybe about less than 2 weeks ago, and you're talking about one of the most beautiful human beings that have ever graced the face of the earth. Nobody's ever called him a liar. They may not have accepted his truth, or they may not have agreed with his position, but nobody's ever called him a liar. And I'm going to tell you, George, for a man to give over 60 plus years of his life, Minister Farrakhan is 88 now. He just had a birthday. He turned 88 years old. He's given 60 years of dedicated service to the community, particularly the Black community, but to the world. And to have a man like that embody that level of commitment and significance is unprecedented. It's really a blessing in our midst, and most of us won't understand the man until after he's gone. Um, in fact, I thanked him when I was on the telephone with him a couple of weeks ago. I told him, brother, we can never thank you enough. You've been a blessing to our community. You've been unrelenting on the positions that you've taken that represent the best interests of Black people. And so we can never thank you enough. And we pray that your legacy will carry on through the information, education, example that you set forth before. So, the other thing is too, George, and I won't be long-winded, and that is most of our leaders are not celebrated until after they're dead and gone. A lot of times people don't realize the magnitude of who they are until after they're gone. Malcolm X said that if you look at the great body of work that Malcolm X displayed, it's unprecedented. Even to this day, he's one of the most revered men on the planet Earth. Here's a man that went to the 8th grade and came into the teachings of the Nation of Islam, and it totally transformed his life. And speaking of the Nation of Islam, the Nation of Islam is never given credit for its reformation and transformation. that it had on men who were struggling with drugs and alcohol, domestic abuse, every kind of emotional abnormality you can think of. The nation helped these men transform their lives and became productive citizens of society. So again, a big shout out to Minister Farrakhan, his leadership, the Nation of Islam, and any of those transformative agents that are able to transform our people, given our mental state and the things that we've undergone to be where we are today.
Absolutely, and I would say, just conversely, just so people understand where I'm coming from on this, we're all flawed individuals. We all have our flaws. We all have our things. But in the totality of looking at the work of an individual, of a man or a woman, in the totality of their life and what they've actually contributed and what they sacrificed for the betterment of other people. The same reason I wouldn't tear down Minister Farrakhan is the same reason I wouldn't tear down individuals like Winston Churchill. Was he a racist? Sure, we could argue that all day long. But was his steadiness of mind and his foresight, did he not save Europe from the Nazis? Was he not responsible for that when the Rockefellers in America had abandoned England, were going to let them go down in flames? Was he not able to pull a coalition together to stop the Nazi onslaught? And are we not supposed to be grateful for that because of these other character flaws? I don't believe so. So I think the same kind of ledger should be held against people like Minister Farrakhan in the totality of the work that they contributed to humanity.
Well, George, I salute your view, and it's beautiful to hear you have a global appreciation and respect for the work of a man, regardless of his ethnicity. Um, but having that global respect is unfortunate that others are not able to get past race. Others are not able to see the great body of work of an individual. And so, they attempt to demonize. I'm gonna just use Minister Farrakhan. They attempt to demonize the man and make him the antichrist. But again, here's a man who's given over 60 plus years of service to the black community. So, I'm very much like you, George. I don't care what your race is. I can appreciate the body of work that you present, and that's really what it's all about.
Well, we're moving into reopening here across St. Louis and across the state of Missouri and the region. There are still a lot of unsolved issues in regards to the relationship between law enforcement and the black community across this entire region here. Not a lot has been solved. A lot of people applauded what happened with the Derek Chauvin trial and the outcome of that. I don't know if that answers any questions or if that changes anything.
Well, I don't know if it changes anything either. It's unfathomable to think that this much nationwide pressure had to be put on a police officer to get this level of justice. And we know a lot of things in the court. Just because you're not found guilty, don't mean that you're not guilty. They have multi-million dollar budgets and attorneys that will fight tooth and nail to defend a position that is knowingly wrong. So I don't know how much that levels the playing field with Derek Chauvin being found guilty, because there's so many other bad cops out here, and I'm okay with police. I support police. I support good police, but I don't support those bad police that use their power, position, and the system to abuse, particularly people of color. And I'm gonna tell you something. George, we always hear the saying that with regards to this police brutality, that if police were better trained, police seem to show the highest level of restraint, respect, and self-regard when it's a white citizen. I always say treat black people the same way you treat white people, and then that puts an end to police brutality. It just does. And I know, and research shows when white people become unhinged and they attack police, or they walk out of stores with guns, or shoot up a place, they still come out alive. They're not executed where they're shot, 50 times, 100 times. That kind of behavior is just unacceptable at the end of the day. So I always say treat us the way you treat your own. And that right there will solve the race issue and the race problem. I don't think it's a training issue. I think it's an individual decision. I think it's emboldened by white supremacy, this position of power, um, and just this mindset that I'm superior to people of color, and so I'm going to exercise this dominance and subjugate, even kill you if necessary. So it's unfortunate that in 2021 we're still dealing with those issues. You know, the other thing is too, and I'll be brief. You look at the Ahmaud Arbery case. You know, that incident happened maybe a year and a half ago. Why does it take 2 years, 3 years to get a videotape back from an incident?
You are right on that. We've run out of time today. Ajuma Muhammad, and for those of you who want to be more familiar with his writings and where to find him and what he talks about, go to ajuma.org for more information there. I wish you brothers safe travels in the future, the year up ahead, and hopefully we'll hear back from you soon and let us know what's going on across the planet.
Wow, man, time flies when you're having fun. It seems like we just got started. Let me throw another website out. That is www.ajuma, Muhammad, all one word, .org. And that's AJUMA, Muhammad, MUHAMMAD.org, O-R-G. It just had a new website developed so people can kind of see my body of work and some of the work that I'm doing in Africa. So, George, I'm looking forward to getting back on your show again. I hope that God has blessed my tongue, and I thank you for the opportunity and consideration. And I hope that we're making a difference, brother. That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. You're absolutely right on that. And I want to thank you all for tuning in this morning. We'll see you next week right here on Now St. Louis.